Hello, my name is Jay. I'm codependent. I'm here in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and thanks to the miracles of Zoom, I did not have to take a plane to come to you. And considering my plane anxiety, this is a good thing for me. Thank you all for coming. I don't know to what degree you knew what the topic was going to be today, but here is the topic from inner child to inner committee. Now, I presented this to World Coda in 2021, but there's good news. I just found out about 20 minutes ago that this will be a two-parter, which is good news because I added a bunch of stuff and it already took an hour and a half at World. So here we are, part one. So there's a spoiler for this whole workshop. My experience tells me that how I treat others has a lot to do with how I treat myself. And how I treat myself on the best day is the highest possible level I can treat someone else on any other given day. And so really looking into, well, how am I treating myself? What are my thoughts to myself, at myself, about myself? Can be really critical because once I heal my relationship with myself, I can also heal my relationship with other people. And so really getting in touch with all the different aspects of myself and being real honest about all that is critical to this process. So I'm almost not going to talk about it much today, but everything that I plan to talk about today applies very much to step 4, as well as steps 5 through 9. There's going to be some journaling time today, but still, please consider this workshop an overview, and there's going to be a lot of questions that you can answer. If you want to do that at home, there's a whole week between now and the next time I'll be here, apparently. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And this is going to be too heavy to finish in, 45 minutes. While the intro was being read, I took the liberty of trying to cut this thing in half so that I can share the first half with you at the end of the meeting. So if that interests you, please stick around. If you don't already have it in front of you, a journal and writing implement might come in handy. To give you an idea of what we're doing, part 1, which is today, we're going to talk about taking a census of my inner personalities, my internal committee. Going to talk a little bit about relationships among the committee members. We're going to talk about interaction spaces for those committee members to meet in. And then for part 2, we're going to talk a lot about interaction between the committee members and what I can do about disruptive committee members, what I can do to bring together the committee. How do we make decisions together? How do we structure inter-committee meetings, as well as the larger recovery path? So that gives you an idea of what I plan to present. We're going to be making a lot of use of these pieces of literature mostly next week because of the way this ended up getting cut apart. So if you would like access to any of these, perhaps they will be shipped on time. I don't know. We'll be using Building Coda Community, Healthy Meetings Matter. A lot of people consider this to be a piece of literature that's only applicable to healthy meetings, healthy intergroups, that sort of thing. But this workshop focuses on using this particular piece of literature as recovery literature. We're also going to touch on communication recovery and establishing boundaries, which are both available as free PDFs at coda.org, as well as Codependence Anonymous, our big book, and the 12-piece relationship toolkit. So, without further ado, let's begin. I imagine it's called something similar in the UK, but here in the US, every 10 years, we take a census. And by we, I mean the government. tries to count all the people in the country due to rounding errors, etc. It's not perfectly accurate. And I find that this census within my inner committee, sometimes committee members stay silent. And, that's okay. They'll come out when they need to. And so the question is, do you have interpersonalities, and who are they? Well, gosh, who are you? What do you mean, who am I? I mean, are you your name? Are you where you were born or what has happened to you? Are you your job or how much money you make? Are you who you know? Are you made up of your relationships? When you hear a voice in your head, is it your voice? For me, a lot of the times I hear my own voice talking to me, but it's a direct recording of something someone else, often my childhood caretakers, was saying to me quite often. Is that me? Well, there's a lot of hints out there. We don't talk a lot about science in Coda, but it is interesting to know that there's a lot of interesting information out there on the internet, and I'm just going to hint at a couple of things. It turns out my one brain is actually two brains. It turns out that some early epileptic seizure having persons had the connection between their right and left hemisphere surgically cut. And after those procedures, it was found that the right hand and the left hand would seem to be making different choices, had the ability to draw things at the same time and ended up drawing very different things, which I find very interesting. And also, I am a multitude. The human body is made up of all sorts of things in addition to me. There's gut bacteria, there's viruses, there's fungi. 3% of my body weight is bacteria alone. Mitochondria have their own DNA that live within each and every one of our cells. Apparently, not a scientist, you can check my work. We have trillions of cells each, and each can be considered as an individual, as is evidence when we get cancer, etc. Interestingly, I had a personal experience with gut bacteria. I came back from a trip decades ago now, my goodness, and they had told me that I had something called traveler's stomach, which occurs when your gut bacteria gets used to one environment and then is rapidly shifted to another environment. Apparently, the different bacteria from the two locations start fighting with each other. And the way that I was told to deal with that was to do this very involved, I'm not going to go into too much details, feeding situation that had me eating nothing but broth. And within 24 hours, I had the hugest craving for bread I had ever experienced. When I called the doctor said, yeah, that's your gut bacteria dying and signaling you that they need to live. And I said, my goodness, my gut bacteria can signal me. And all of a sudden, I had a slightly different relationship to my food cravings. So all of that is incredibly interesting to me. Maybe you'll enjoy it as well. Now, the human body is made up of several different systems. I don't know that we can say that they are other, but there's a nervous system, there's a polyvagal system, there's a respiratory system, there's a lymphatic system. All these systems work together and focus on different things to help regulate the body or the me, whatever we're talking about here. And based on my experience with the gut bacteria, it occurs to me that maybe these different systems might communicate in their own interesting ways and might have certain priorities. We also have these things that I've labeled processes. I'm not really sure how to label them, but we talk about, I have thoughts, I have feelings. And when I say feelings, do I mean emotions? Do I mean sensations? I have desires. And maybe these are all the same thing, or maybe they're slightly different. how do I break up the world becomes an interesting question. But thinking about these things helps me realize that some of the things that come to my mind or heart or self are different types of things based on how our language has broken it up. So I'm getting very different information from different places for decision making, which is why I approach myself as a community rather than an individual, a we rather than an I. So, oh my gosh, Jay, what are we doing here exactly? My hope is that I can give you this process to build a conceptual framework to reframe, reorganize, and reimagine our relationship to ourselves. Now, this is not the method. This is a method. This workshop is not endorsed by Coda Incorporated. It's not endorsed by Coda UK. The usual caveats and addenda. So how can I conceive of inner committee? Well, interestingly, the Coda founders have an opinion on this. You attend enough Coda founder talks and you discover that at least one of the Coda founders conceives of the inner committee as having 4 entities. There's the inner child, there's the inner teenager, there's the inner parent, and the higher self. Now, I don't want to start any fights here, but I do want to remind everybody that the founders are human beings. And if this doesn't work for you, you don't have to take it. There are many other options out there. Now, there's also archetypes, literary archetypes. There's archetypal ideas in literature. There's the tarot. There's all sorts of ideas out there. Archetypes can help with understanding inner motivation and or examples of what others have related to. Lots and lots of options, myths, tall tales, all these things. Another thing that worked well for me is remembering childhood. What stuffed animals was I attracted to? What personalities did I give to them? What imaginary friends did I come up with? Who were the protagonists of the storybooks that I wanted to hear over and over and over? Something inside me was being expressed at that time. I'm really interested in this idea. I'm really interested in the hero conquering this problem. And so thinking back to what those stories were and were about can help me think about what was going on in my mind in the early days. There's also this idea of core emotions. Now, there's all sorts of emotions out there. Here's a list of emotions: anger, disgust, fear, joy, sadness. Now, this came from a list on the internet of core emotions. Now, let's have a quick, intermission real quick. If codependence is a most deeply rooted compulsive behavior born out of our sometimes moderately, sometimes extremely dysfunctional families and other systems, then it might help to ask myself whether some emotions are good and some are bad, or if a dysfunctional societal system of judgment and control wants me to think that some of my emotions are good and some of my emotions are bad. I would like to argue today that all emotions bring us information. Fear tells me, hey, this is a new situation to me. I don't know what's going to happen. This could be dangerous. Disgust tells me, ooh, there's something toxic happening right now. This is not in alignment with me. Anger, you know what? We made some agreements and they're not being honored. I have unspoken expectations. Maybe I need to let you know about those so that you won't step on my proverbial toes. In a society where I'm allowed to vocalize these feelings without retribution, all of a sudden these feelings aren't bad. They're information that give you feedback about what I need from this relationship. So often the label bad is used to reinforce or impose unequal power dynamics, in my opinion. Now, back to the workshop. Core emotions aren't necessarily core. There's plenty of other emotions. This one might have come from some movie you've seen, but there are many others. And ultimately, what worked well for me is figuring out what are the emotions I'm feeling the most often. Those are my personal core emotions right now. And as I've grown in program, the emotions that I've felt most often have changed. And so whatever core means, most common for me right now has been a fantastic way of judging that and letting go of external people's lists. Now, there's this concept in Western psychology that I wanted to talk about real quickly. It's this idea of splitting. Now, human beings are widely considered as social animals who need other humans or other social animals. If a parent denies me, I might be left alone, quite literally, as in, Jay, go to your room, or emotionally. My parents give me the silent treatment for minutes, hours, or even days. If I need someone and none of the other people in my home are there for me, then one idea is I could split myself into the one who is helped and the one who helps. And in that way, I can take care of myself. Sometimes this can happen during a traumatic shock. And it's been said that the degree of trauma determines the degree of splitting. But I'd like to argue that even outside of what some people would consider trauma, this can happen even with small moments of feeling slighted. But I do want to talk real quick about this line here, one who helps and one who is helped. If this is true, it means that all our committee members are there to help us. They're on our side in their own way in the struggle to fit in and or survive the family and other systems. I have interpersonalities who have, during the course of our relationship, said some pretty nasty things to me. But ultimately, by sharing those things, it was the best those intercommittee members could do with the communication skill that they had. And so, if I have an abusive inner voice, then I can not only work on figuring out whose voice that really is, but I can also work at, what's the underlying message and how can I give that voice what it needs so that it doesn't need to speak to me that way. We've got this common term, the inner critic. I was just talking about the inner critic, and I don't think there's any one inner critic. I think different people have slightly different inner critics, and a lot of these look similar, but ultimately they look slightly different. And so thinking about how does my inner critic talk to me, and what is the content of what my inner critic is saying, that can give me some ideas on what is happening, what that inner personality wants or needs. Special bonus note, inner child doll. Many members have been helped by finding or adopting an inner child doll to represent their inner child in the physical world. I personally had two little dragons. One was red, one was white. Nope, I don't know why that just happened. One was red, one was black. And other than that, they were pretty much identical. And they came along with me for years and years. And we're going to talk a little bit about them in a little bit. I found benefits to this practice, and unfortunately, talking in great detail about that at this time is outside the scope of the workshop. But I do know that many people have some experience with this, and so making some reach out calls to get some more information might be useful. So I've talked a lot. Let's take maybe 5 minutes to do a little self-journaling, reflection on what we've heard so far. I invite you to take a census of the entities within. Now, I'd like to suggest that 5 minutes is not even the tip of the iceberg. It's the tip of the tip of the iceberg, and that's okay. What inner committee members are you already aware of? If you've already considered these ideas, take some time to write down the ones you know, but also maybe open up yourself to see if anybody else wants to step forward and identify themselves. If you've never done this, you can just focus on writing down what thoughts and feelings are floating or being screamed within your mind right now. You might not even have a label for them yet, but that's okay. Later, with your sponsor, with your recovery friends, you can look over the journaling and see if you can sort and classify. We're not going to share right after this, but I believe that what you discover and or write will be useful for exercises that are coming up later, as well as next week. So let's begin. Okay. Well, I hope you've discovered something interesting, and I hope that you will continue this process at a later time. For now, let's continue this journey together. Now, special bonus note, creating committee members. There was a time where I was just getting started with the inner committee process, and I had this inner child, and I was a bit of a mess because I was looking into some of my childhood wounds, specifically physical abuse, verbal abuse, also questioning sexual abuse. And my inner child really needed someone to be there for me. I was, crying at work from time to time, and I needed to take time to be there for my inner child. But living in the system that I live in, this is not something I'm paid for some reason, even though it made me a much better person and a much better employee. I had to figure out something to do. And so another member suggested to me that I create a new inner personality, in this case, an inner babysitter for my inner child. And we went through a long exercise about what would that inner babysitter be like? Who are some people from literature who I could draw from? And that was very helpful. I gave my inner babysitter some heavy weapons and a nice walled off, beautiful compound. And my inner child got to play on the playground, and it was great. It really made a difference. So it is possible to, when necessary, make up new inner personalities if that seems helpful. I'm not necessarily advocating this, but it did work for me. Take what you like and leave the rest. So, relationships. Well, now that I've discovered all of these inner committee members, what's the relationship? What's my relationship to each of them? And what are the relationships amongst my committee members to each other? To talk about this, I've put up a quick little thing to illustrate what I was going through. And I just want to warn you that this section is very much simplified for speed and clarity. As I mentioned earlier, I had two inner children who were twins. There was Smokey and there was Blaze. Smokey and Blaze went everywhere together. Smokey worries about Blaze, and Blaze worries about Smokey. I also had an inner teenager. My inner teenager was very protective of Smokey and Blaze and saw them as very innocent. And, there are the government systems. There's how my parents were with me. And my inner teenager was very angry at both of those entities. My inner teenager was also angry at me for not doing more to protect Smokey and Blaze when I was younger. Later, I went to a retreat in Arizona, and I did a lot of work on grief. And as part of that process, I learned that actually both Smokey and Blaze were also angry. My inner teenager felt angry and resentful that he had to take care of Smokey and Blaze. Felt angry at himself. Basically, there was anger everywhere. And just a reminder, this was the simplified version. And so we come very quickly to another journaling section. I'm interested to know, how do these inner committee members feel about each other? How do you feel about them? The way I charted it out is an idea, but there are many ways to chart this out. You can do it in straight up writing if that feels good. What does each committee member see in each other? What do they feel about each other? And not all relationships are the same in both directions. There's some words here to get you started on how some of those entities might be feeling about each other, or how you might be feeling towards them, or they might be feeling towards you. I'm going to set the timer for another 5 minutes, and we'll be back. All right. Let's gently return. So I think I'm resting on about 10 minutes. Let's see how this goes. Now, we've just been talking about how my inner committee and I might have some relationships, but I just would like to share this one extra little thing with you. I have a higher power, and it stands to reason that it's possible that my inner committee members might have at least different concepts of who higher power is and what higher power wants, if not entirely different higher powers. So perhaps outside the scope of this, if this seems interesting to you, asking my inner committee, what do you think about higher power? Has brought up some very interesting points, especially for those younger, abused parts of myself. This line of thinking can make fourth steps very complex from a writing perspective, but it sure did make it clearer to understand what was going on in my childhood when I did 5 through 9. All right, we're going to do an intermission. At least it would be an intermission if this were the full workshop all in one day. But I do like the word because it's a great pun, because you see, I'm a big fan of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Now, you don't need to watch Star Trek: The Next Generation in order to understand anything I'm about to say. Suffice to say that there's a big spaceship and it goes through space on TV. And every once in a while, that spaceship will run into another spaceship. And there's people inside the spaceship that's, the main ship of the show. And when they're inside the ship, they have a screen that shows them the ship that they're seeing. And then, they say, hey, do you want to chat? And sometimes the captain of the other ship comes on the screen and they talk to each other and they negotiate and they have, all their talks. And I was watching Star Trek one day and it occurred to me, the ships kind of walking up to each other in space, it's like each of their crews is a whole inner committee. And that's interesting because each of the people on the bridge of the ship have different ideas of what should be done. And I'll get back to that in just a minute. And it occurred to me that, maybe the ships are like my physical body and the crew is like my inner committee, which is very interesting to me, what with the whole, we're all on Zoom looking at each other through screens. But anyway, so there's this crew. And I was thinking to myself, who do these people represent? And if you haven't watched Star Trek, this might not make a whole lot of sense, but you can see over here, we've got the young kid, maybe he's like an inner child. And over here, we've got, the counselor, and maybe that person represents empathy. And over here, we've got this computer man who, maybe that's knowledge. Okay, fine. Back here, we've got the security officer. Maybe that's the fight or flight response. Or or my aggression or something. Okay, fine. Let's take this way too far. Who's this guy? Well, it turns out if you do a lot of weird nerd research, this right here happens to be the engineering panel. So maybe this is the guy who's watching all the, involuntary responses and keeping the heart rate going and that sort of thing. Probably too nerdy. And then there's Riker, and this is kind of an inside joke, but who the heck is Riker? I mean, could be the libido, could be inner teenager. I don't know. Anyway. And then I took it one step further and I thought to myself, the insides of these ships are all very interesting. And if I could build a place for my inner committee to meet, what would that be like? Each committee member might have different ideas of design, etc. So let's take a look at the inside of the starship. This is the bridge. We've got the captain who sits there in the center, and the advisors sit very close. I've got the first officer, got the empathetic person, and then, all the others are kind of gathered around. And they're all facing basically the same direction when stuff is happening, kind of showing maybe there's a little bit of unity amongst them. Interestingly, on this ship, the tactical station is behind the captain, which makes it a little bit further from the outside. So maybe that shows a little bit of priority. We're going to negotiate first, then we're going to fire missiles. The helm requires direct orders from the captain, which ensures that the decisions are conscious rather than unconscious. It's a very bright and open space. It's very calming. You might look at a Klingon bridge interior to compare this. Now, you can't see it in this picture, unfortunately, but there is also a circular kind of a eyeball-shaped window right above this, which allows a picture of the universe inside. Maybe that's a higher power of some sorts. There's also a door to this conference room. There's a conference room right over here. And this is the place where they engage with the outside world. But the conference room is very interesting because whenever there's a big decision and we need to get more information, everybody goes into that conference room and has a discussion. And interestingly, there is room for everyone at the table. Everyone's facing everyone. Each person gets time to speak. The captain listens to the crew, and because of their long interactions with each other, the crew trusts the captain. There's comfortable chairs for longer meetings. There's a darker room. It's more comfortable to discuss feelings and concerns. And there's much bigger windows, which could mean more room for higher power. I don't know. So together, these two interaction spaces make for what seems to be a very coordinated inter-committee relationship. Everybody seems to have the same idea of common welfare, same idea of purpose, and want to do what's best for the entire crew, the entire ship. Now, this is a very interesting thing when you contrast it with another show. I don't know if you've seen it, but I'm just going to show you a picture from that show. This is the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones. And I just want to point out all the different interactions of the people who interact in the room where that Iron Throne is. A lot more people upset at a lot more other people to the point where they're actually interested in murdering one another. And this is very interesting because when I really thought of it, there were some of my committee members who weren't interested in interacting with some of my other committee members and wish they would just go away. Now, this inner space thing isn't necessarily for everyone, but I've had a number of special workers encourage me to create imaginary places to go. You know, go to your happy place, the beach or the forest or whatever makes you happy. So if that sort of thing has worked for you in the past, this sort of thing might also be useful. Now, do you already have interaction spaces for your committee? Maybe, maybe not. If you do, what's the current one? If you don't, what would you think would be good? it can be helpful to ask each member of your committee what their ideal interaction space or environment might be. What are they willing to compromise on? And, remind them to focus on their own safety and comfort. What's great about inner spaces is they don't have to be constrained by physics or space or gravity. In fact, you could have them all video conference with each other from their safest, most comfortable places. Or you could come up with a common one. This would be a great time for drawing, collage, model building. Now, normally this is the kind of page where I'd say, okay, take 5 minutes to think about it, but this is definitely an activity that needs more than 5 minutes. So I'd like to encourage you to take this if you like it and leave it if you don't. Now, interaction. How do we interact with our committee? How do we decide what to do? That's what we're talking about next week. We're going to draw answers from Building Coda Community, Healthy Meetings Matter, which is official Coda literature. We're going to go through kind of line by line and kind of discover what the literature implies about our interactions with our inner committee. So not to promote, but if this workshop has been interesting to you, then the next workshop might also be interesting to you. I hope you've enjoyed it.